Thank you, Greta. We live in a world of colliding maps. So I've asked several people to pass out a chunk of a map. And if you want to take one, go ahead and take one. But if you do take one, take it with you and either throw it away on your own and don't leave the chapel staff to clean up after you, okay? We're using it as an illustration. I have a piece of a map, and I don't recognize many towns on it. So I don't really know where I'm at in accordance to this map. I don't know if I can use this map to get to where I think I should be going. Now, some of you are just now looking at your neighbor and saying, hey, does my map, does it relate to yours at all? And, they're only about, 1 or 2 inch chunk. And so it's kind of tough. Anybody recognize the place that they have on their map? A town that they have on their map? Oh, good. Now I have a big map of Iowa. Let's hear it, Iowa people. I was born in Iowa. Nevertheless, still love that state. Anyway, so this map, I use quite often because traveling through Iowa, some of the towns, you need to find them. But this map, this little square of 2 inches, becomes a little difficult to navigate, and I have a little more trouble actually using it meaningfully. And this map is easy to just say, well, I'm going to throw that away because it's novel. I'm curious about it, but it really has no implication for my life. People, that's how we kind of treat the image of God. Like just a little piece of map. It has no meaning. It isn't used for direction. And I certainly don't know where it's going to come to play with how we really live. So I want to talk to us about being image bearers. We've started talking about a journey of learning about Imago Dei, the image of God. And if you've been here in chapel the last couple times, or last week or so, you've heard various speakers describe very well the aspects of what this image of God is about. My desire today is to share with you how do you take the image of God and make it more than just a series of lines and ragged edges, and make it mean something more that might have design and meaning and direction and usefulness. Well, let's talk about the image of God. You've heard that the image of God is a royal function. When God gave us His image, we became designed with the purpose that in the creation, we, of all creation, different than the animals and everything else, we would bear God's royal territory. The map marks royal territory. I love singing the hymn, "This is my Father's world," because it reminds me not to believe the lie that the world belongs to the enemy. And the image of God in you and in me and in every person should mark the territory that God wants to show His rulership, His glory, His good, His character. Now we know that that's kind of messed up. We'll get to that in just a moment. But something else that the map marks. The map of Imago Dei denotes direction and progress and design and relationship. on the way to grandmother's house. How do we get there? Oh, there's a detour, but no worries, I have a map. And most of us these days use a UPS, recalculating all the time. My father-in-law received a GPS, and he says, oh no, now I have 2 women telling me what to do and where to go. The map shows us what we were created to do, and it kind of goes back to that: be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth. But it's kind of broken, isn't it? We end up with detours and dead ends, and something is wrong. It's not the way it was designed to be. But the map is also an outline of real places and real events. But that's broken too, because the ability to be that royal function of representing God's glory and the relationships that we have with Him and with others, and the reality. I think of God's image in those 3 ways. A royal function. I represent Him. A relationship with Him that overflows to others. And then the reality that I bear a soul. I have the capacity to know myself and God. I was talking to a Russian school teacher at one time, and he came up and said, they lied to us. And I said, who lied to you? The government officials lied to us. And I said, well, tell me more. They said that there is no God. They said we have no soul. They said we have the highest standard of living in the world. And I smiled at that last one because with a few pictures, I could pretty quickly dispel your standard of living is not necessarily the highest in the world. There was an internal witness. Greta just read it about it in Romans 1, that there's something within us that knows I'm not just an animal. I have this capacity. Now, friends, we rather quickly suppress that, drown that, dispel it, put it out of sight, believe a lie about it. And then he looked at me, this Russian teacher, and said, so with what you're telling me, maybe there is a God. And I said, maybe there is. And maybe that God is willing and ready and has prepared a way to have a relationship with you to where you too can represent Him. And I was talking about Imago Dei, the image of God. Royal representatives. You look at the other people around you, they're princesses and princes representing the glory of God. Take it by faith. The relationship with God that overflows to each other, that's what we're supposed to be doing. And then there's this reality of the capacity to know God in what I think and what I feel and what I do. It's amazing. But it's broken. My wife Donna and I had the privilege of traveling in Russia in the days shortly after Glasnost and Perestroika. And we met a man who was very proud of the fact that in his apartment he had a microwave, a television set, and a stereo. But as we continued to talk to him, we also understood from his report that none of them worked. He didn't have the parts to fix them, and he really didn't know who to call. How like a person that doesn't know Jesus Christ. They have this value. They have something of meaning, but it's kind of broken. And they don't know where to get the parts, and they don't really know who to call. Wow. The royal function, we live as paupers, working to map out territory that we seem never to be able to settle and build upon. We're always seeming like we're hired men instead of settlers. The story is told of Peter Deinicke, the great evangelist of a generation or so past, who, when he was first coming over from Europe, Russia, to the United States, he received passage on a ship to New York. And the first several days, he ate the bread, the black Russian bread that his mother had given him, but then he kept longing and looking into the dining hall. And some of the sailors saw that he was kind of looking in there, and they said, would you like to go into the dining hall and eat? Oh, yes. Well, if you mop the decks, you can go into the dining hall. And so he very eagerly mopped the decks, and he spent all of that passage to New York mopping the decks for hours every day. And he gets off the boat and meets his uncle, and he tells him that he got to eat in the dining hall on the ship. And his uncle said, oh, Peter, the ticket includes dining privileges. How like my life, and maybe yours, where we begin to say, okay, I'm going to work so that I can really represent the glory of God, not realizing that salvation that has come to us is the glory that allows us to dine with him. Do I need to talk about relationships being messed up? You know, the passage in Romans talks about how our passions are degraded, and we even give up the normal function of the oneness that's supposed to be. A man and a woman become one. It's a mystery. We don't want to diminish it. We don't want to honor it above what God honors it, but Hebrews tells us that marriage should be held in honor among all. Married people do that by faithfulness to their spouse. And single people do that by maintaining purity. And we honor marriage among all. Because the verse continues in Hebrews 13 that adulterers and fornicators, God will judge. And we go, well, yeah, but it looks so good sometimes. And it's so easy to live less than the glory of God. And to treat other people in relationship as objects to be used and sometimes abused, rather than a person that we befriend and promote and grow with to show the glory of God. And so we date kind of weird, seeing how much we can get in all the bad senses of that, instead of a love that gives the best to the other person, even if it means giving them freedom to choose to be with someone else. Our mind is darkened. Romans 1 says that we don't even see clearly the glory of God, and we exchange that glory for stuff, all the way down to lizards. Why do we do that? Because when you start with saying, okay, I'm not going to honor God as God, I have to replace God with something else, we suppress that truth, we'll just fill that vacuum with a bunch of messed up mind and passion and action. And the list is pretty bleak. We don't honor God as God or give thanks, but we become futile or empty or senseless in the way that we have relationships with one another. But maybe that reality would be true. I know that we kind of live like pauper prodigals, kind of hitching the ride with any relationship that we can find that seems to be going our way. But maybe the reality that in our society, even the reality of being image bearers, and I'm talking about those that don't know Jesus, still bear the image of God. Not just Christians. Certainly, Christians are being renewed according to that image and that design. But even unbelievers or people that are less than perfect or normal. I have a niece who some would consider handicapped. Her mental capabilities are probably not going to progress much beyond 9 to 12 years of age, even though she's now in her mid-30s. And they look at my niece and say, well, she's not really a person. And it angers me. She is of worth, even if she can't think like you think and do the things you do. But I've also discovered that she feels things a lot clearer and better than some of my intellectual friends. It's amazing, the image of God in that lady's life. And frankly, she knows Jesus, and so that transformation is happening also. It's really wonderful to see. So, okay. We're meant to be image bearers, but we live in a fallen world. We've established those two facts. How should we live as image bearers in a fallen world? Thank you for asking. Let's turn to Romans 12, 1 and 2, and just get a few brief applications before we progress on with our day. Romans 12 says, I urge you therefore, brethren, cistern, by the mercies of God. Okay. The very first thing on being image bearers in a fallen world is to have a relationship with the map maker. Romans 1:16 says, I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God. You and I need power. We need meaning. We need relationship. And it starts with a relationship with God that has been provided by what Jesus Christ has done on the cross. Now I know, Trinity students, we hear this in classes and we hear this in the halls, and we hear, we're deaf for all the times that we hear it. And yet I'm worried that we have lost our hearing in the decibels of faith. My dad, when he was still here, he's with the Lord now, but my dad had lost his hearing in the registers of the tractor that he spent a lot of time on. And that the tone of the tractor was about the same tone as my voice. So we could be driving down the road, and I'd be sharing something with him very important, and he'd look over and say, you say something? Well, yes, Dad, I did. And this time I hope that you'll hear it. Hebrews 5 talks about, I'm worried about you. You should have progressed to the point where you've become teachers, but I need to go back to the elementary principles because you have become hard of hearing. You've lost your hearing. And so we need to begin with that relationship, but then we need to renew our mind. Romans 12:2 says, and don't be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Certainly, at a Christian college, there is ample opportunity for that to happen. And from what I can tell, it happens not only in the classroom. I hope it does. I'm paid to do that. Thank you very much. But I also think that we need to see this transformation of mind in the face of our friends and on every aspect of our lives. And then those actions will overflow to where we will do the will of God from our heart. Not, got to do the will of God. If I must, okay. Thank you, Eeyore. But we willingly, because of a renewed mind and a relationship life, we can live obedient to the family code, to the way that our family, God our Father, wants us to live. And that means that we treat our brothers and sisters as brothers and sisters and not as objects to be possessed. We treat the authorities among us as God's instruments for developing faith and expertise. Oh, I want that for my life. I so long to see that. When things are broken, I don't know if any of you have ever seen your bones, but they're white. And when I saw the broken bones of a rather severe arm accident on the farm when I was in high school, I thought, wow, the pain hadn't hit yet. And I'm going, wow, look at that. Those bones are white. Later, it was revealed to me rather forcefully, bones are not meant to be outside where you can view them. And a very skilled surgeon had to spend several hours putting them back together and then surrounding them and attaching them to the muscles that had been mangled. And I'm going, oh, that is so like my spiritual life, Father. I think, oh, it's not so bad. But then the pain really hits. And I go, oh, God, please, take away the pain. And sometimes he actually has to use the pain to tell him where to do surgery. For 5 weeks, I was in the hospital. And because of the infection and everything else that was going on in that arm, every other day they would take me up to surgery and do minor surgery to cut away that which was dead. And they didn't give me any anesthesia because they wanted me to tell if they were getting too close to a nerve. Well, hello, you touch it, you're too close. What I'm saying to you is that let God do his work. And sometimes he has to go to the hurting spot to heal us. So that he would remind us, you were created to be my royal representatives. You were created to have a relationship with me and others that represents that glory. You were created with the reality of the ability to know God and to make him known. Live in that, dear friends. Live in that. Let's pray together.